Hi, I'm Isaac Feldberg with the America's SAP User Group, or ASUG, and we're here at SAP Sapphire, an ASUG annual conference. I'm delighted to be joined today by three very special guests. Jim Loiocno from HPE, Randall Grogan from Energy Transfer, and Christian Bleim from Intel. Could all three of you speak a little bit to your respective roles and responsibilities within your businesses as we get this conversation underway? Randall?
Certainly. So I'm Randall Grogan. I'm a senior director with Energy Transfer. I got overall responsibility from an IT perspective for really all of our financial applications, including SAP, as well as some of our ETRM applications like Right Angle.
Thank you.
Jim Loiocno, I'm the sales leader for private cloud at HPE, so I lead global sales efforts for what includes the RISE CDC option.
And my name is Christian Bleim. I am part of the sales and marketing organization at Intel. We cover SAP as an account, and our primary focus is to work with partners and the ecosystem to enable and get the best out of Intel architecture for our customers and partners.
I'm especially excited to have all three of you here today to talk about the RISE CDC option, which I've increasingly heard described as one of the SAP landscape's best kept secrets. But in terms of putting that in the context of a customer journey, first, Randall, could you tell us a little bit more about Energy Transfer as a business before we get into the journey?
Yeah, so Energy Transfer, for those that aren't aware, is by most measures the largest midstream in the U.S. Pipelines. So we're Fortune 50. But just outside of Energy Transfer, we also have a number of other acquisitions. So one that most folks are familiar with is Sunoco. There's one of our subsidiaries, USA Compression, SEC, and another other acquisition. So we've got about 140,000 miles of pipeline. We move of somewhere between a third to 40% of all of the hydrocarbons in the U.S. So very large company, somewhat like the CDC model. A lot of folks don't know who we are, but we're actually fairly large, and
We're happy you're there.
There you go. Thank you.
And in terms of illuminating both Energy Transfer and the CDC option, I understand that Energy Transfer had been on an SAP S/4HANA journey for several years before embarking on this current journey. And as customers pursue all kinds of different options for ERP modernization, why did the option that we're about to talk about make the most sense for your business?
Yeah, so we're a company that really likes to, as much as possible, control and manage everything that we have, and from the operations side all the way over to IT side. As you mentioned, we moved to S4 almost 6-7 years ago. So by the energy industry standards, that's very early. So we moved to S4 after doing a whole big application rationalization. We're on our second round of upgrades since that point in time, and really for us, the timing was right because we're already on HPE hardware, Superdome Flex hardware in our data centers, and as we're kind of making this looking at it from a RISE perspective, that hardware is reaching end of life, and if we were to make a change, now's the time to do that change. And really, up until a year ago, that CDC model was not available, and every time SAP came and talked to us, I said, well, here's the trouble. We really want to have this in our own data center. So it was really only in this last year that became an option, and that we started having those conversations with SAP about what that would look like if we were to move that direction.
Thank you.
So,
And before we get into that in more detail, Jim, could you speak a little bit in the context of RISE with SAP, your stance and your take on what makes the CDC option so unique?
Sure. The RISE with SAP option is a platform as a service option with a subscription license, and it really is sold in two different flavors. And actually, the CDC option is one of those two flavors. One being client or customer data center CDC, or hyperscale cloud option. And it's kind of funny because the CDC option has been around for a while. And the difference is, and the unique value proposition is that it should almost be the default, because there's no difference really in the two, except for the fact that you don't have to bundle data center move. If you're already a client data center person, you can stay there. If you're already a hyperscale public cloud person, you can stay there. And so you can get the same RISE option comes to you. And you don't have to change control, you don't have to change security or compliance or redo everything over again because you're mixing two projects in one instead of just doing the one project, which is to get you to rise.
If we had not gone to Rise, we would have just continued with HP hardware in our data center. So for us, again, like you say, my goal was to have as little change as possible because, from my standpoint as a having responsibility for this area, to some extent, change also means a certain amount of risk. So we feel like, having that hardware in our data center, which is, where all of our commercial systems that feed, that feed, coming from the pipelines, that's where all that information comes from and goes into our SAP system. So, really having all of that in one location, we just felt like that gives us more control over that, and we feel like we have a better, able to manage our security associated with that. So it's just less change. So it for us, I think it fits well, and I think for a lot of other organizations, it should fit well as well.
And Randall, could you speak to some of the other areas as well of the minimized risk is one piece of that, but also the compliance, the consistent latency for integrated applications.
Sure.
There are a few other areas we could touch on there.
Yeah. So as I mentioned, so we have a lot of different commercial systems. And when I say commercial systems, I mean, systems that are connected up to our SCADA systems, our midstream. So Right Angle and Messenger Plus and Entero and Allegro and Align and Synthesis. And we have one of each, and in some cases, more than one of each. All of those feed SAP, and probably 90% of all my transactional volumes come from these systems. And those are in our data centers, both in Houston and in Dallas. So, for us, latency is a real thing. So, having those systems in the same data center with low latency makes sense. And, with some of the issues that some other midstreams had a few years ago, specifically in this case, Colonial Pipeline, there became a whole lot more oversight in terms of what the U.S. government considers to be critical infrastructure. And, we are certainly categorized as critical infrastructure. So, cybersecurity is a big, important issue for us. And we feel like we have better control over that if it's within our own data centers, that we know what connections are being made and where they're coming from. And, some of that may be a transparency issue or not, but regardless, we feel like lower latency, we feel like, the better security, and just in general, we feel like, if there's an issue, we know where to go find that issue. And as opposed to being one of, many within a hyperscaler, we know that the issue resides within our data center. We know who we need to call. We feel like we just have better control over that overall.
Thank you.
Having sold SAP for so many years, we tend to go into meetings where the SAP team sits on one side of the table and the customer sits on the other, and you see things with blinders on it. So I'm focusing on RISE and S4 and all the goodies that are part of the part of the SAP ecosystem. And the client's saying, boy, I got a lot to manage, and that stuff's important. But as Randall just said, he's got a lot of other critical systems. So it's important for us to come together as clients and sellers and professionals to really understand what guys like Randall are going through and try to put all the pieces together for something that makes sense. And instead of saying they're stuck, they're not going to move to RISE because they don't like this. Well, why? What's the reason? What's the obstacle? Let's hear out our customer and maybe come to a win-win-win situation for everybody.
And we've had some situation, folks, of it would be much cheaper if you moved to a hyperscaler model. But, for us, the data center is not going anywhere. That's our backup facilities for our pipeline control group. That's where all of our other systems are at. So even if SAP was to go to hyperscaler, it really wouldn't save us any money. So from that standpoint, there's not a lot of, not a really strong business case for one versus the other in terms of cost savings for us. So it really boiled down to just more of the control. And, we're already familiar with, the Greenlake HP's platform as a service. We already use that within our data centers. So, we're very comfortable with that. It just felt like if we continued along that path, it would be, something we're already familiar with. And, it's just, again, less change in terms of transitioning as we move over to the RISE model. I mean, clearly the responsibilities that, change as you move to here, but at least we have something that we're already comfortable with.
Thank you.
And the definition of cloud. I mean, so where is cloud? It's everywhere. It's anywhere you want it to be.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be in one building. It's about the experience. And if you're already consuming infrastructure as a service, in your own data centers or in a colo or wherever you might be, you're already familiar with that as a cloud as well as what you might be consuming from one of the big hyperscale public clouds.
And we made a point of asking the question. I think we've asked it about 100 times different ways. How is the CDC model different than the hyperscaler model? And the answer we've finally got back and actually put it contractually as well is that there is no difference. They are going to be the same. So whether you're private cloud in your own data center or in a hyperscaler, it's the same. So,
We've all been asking that question.
yes.
To SAP a bunch of times. Like, what's different in the SLA? What's different in the service? What's different in the software? It's the same cloud subscription license. It's the same options. Now, you do have to subscribe to the premium edition if you want to take advantage of all the goodies and the Joule AI Copilot, but there isn't anything different.
Yeah.
And so really the two decisions shouldn't be combined together unless people want to combine them together.
Yeah.
Bring RISE to where the data exists and it'll be easier for you. If you want to commingle the two projects together, by all means you can.
And Randall was speaking to this a little bit just now, but with CDC being an SAP provided service, could you, Jim, speak a little bit more to how HPE participates in that option?
Yeah. So Randall's company was already this Greenlake cloud infrastructure as a service customer. So his company was consuming infrastructure. He didn't have to own the assets. He didn't have to provide the patching and all the things that go underneath it. Exactly the same service. And as a matter of fact, what we sell under the CDC option is HPE Greenlake Cloud Infrastructure as a Service, the same service. So it's consider it like a drop-down menu that you would get when you go to one of the hyperscale public cloud providers. I want this much compute, storage, networking, and you bundle it all together and it delivers for you the infrastructure as a service. In this case, as CDC, HPE sells to the customer SAP, and SAP in turn sells to customers like Randall and Energy Transfer.
Thank you. And so we've been talking a little bit, and Randall, you were laying out some of the key strategic advantages of this option, why it made sense for Energy Transfer. Less risk is a huge strategic advantage, as are some of the other areas that you touched on. But by not moving to the cloud, what SAP services or software do you have to give up at Energy Transfer, if any?
Well, none. I mean, that's the key. There is no difference between CDC private cloud versus hyperscaler or private cloud. There really is effectively no difference. We feel like we get more control. We feel like the SLAs contractually are exactly the same, but we feel like perhaps we have better than what would be delivered within a hyperscaler. And that's kind of what we're used to in our own data centers. So that's kind of what we're hoping to, as we emulate that. And I should be clear that it's a journey, and we're on that journey right now. So we're actually in the process of upgrading our system to 2023 right now, so we can actually take advantage of AI once we move to that RISE model. And then in the July timeframe, we actually start migrating. HPE delivered the hardware in the data center here a few weeks ago, in the process of getting that installed right now. And July, we start the migration from our current systems into the RISE systems. So.
There are a few differences that are subtle. I mean, people don't really care what it's running on, but the infrastructure as a service under the CDC model includes dedicated equipment on the compute, dedicated storage, dedicated firewall, dedicated network. So you're not. I realize that the difference in the public cloud is you're sharing a VNet and things, and you're sharing maybe massive storage arrays. But in essence, this isn't a microservices-based architecture. So what we're doing for S4 ERP is really running in the same model, whether it's in Randall's data centers or it's in a hyperscale public cloud data centers. It looks the same. The only real subtle difference is when we provide it to Randall, he doesn't have a shared infrastructure with anybody else. It's all for Energy Transfer.
From a business standpoint, from our user standpoint, they shouldn't see a difference.
Are there any other strategic advantages that you would mention here, specifically RISE with SAP CDC as opposed to RISE with SAP as hosted on a hyperscale public cloud provider?
We see them as being equal. I mean, I can't speak to other organizations. We see them as being equal from a software standpoint. But again, we feel like from a cybersecurity standpoint, we feel like from a latency standpoint, we just kind of feel like from a control standpoint, we have more if it's on our data center.
There's some basics like in just thinking about if it's actually in your data center under your control.
Mhm.
If a catastrophe hit and there was no power or even no internet,
Mhm.
having a system kind of on your backup power running, even though you would have no monitoring and things that are coming via the internet, it technically would still run.
It would still run.
So there's a little security in knowing that you have the full control over that, and there's
Yep.
also the security of not recreating the wheel about let's answer 1,000 lines about security compliance and
Mhm.
industry regulation compliance. They're already compliant in their data center. It seems to solve a lot of those issues. There are some subtleties with monitoring and things, but um, that's kind of the control aspect. And then with the geopolitical spectrum outside the US, there's a lot of this concern for what if someone just pulls the plug or subpoenas my data and things, and people are like, I think I might want to stay away from that. Inside the States, a little bit less of that.
Yeah.
And now that we've kind of laid out those strategic advantages, Randall, can you speak to some of the other factors that went into your decision to
Yep.
greenlight this, to go ahead?
Yeah. So, we moved to S4, as I mentioned, almost 7 years ago. So our hardware is already reaching kind of the end of life standpoint. From a timing perspective, this was, the appropriate time. So, we started the CDC discussions with SAP kind of early in 2024, and just started going through, what needs to be in there, what do we want to do, and some of my goal was to make this project as small as possible. Kind of the old project manager in me. How do I take risk out? And you do that by taking scope out. So we are for our purposes, we are literally just transitioning from S4 system to S4 system. If we were to do this internally, it would truly just be a hardware shift in this case. But our leadership really believes in ultimately having as much of that within their control. I mean, there's some, perhaps there's strong use cases for the cloud. We didn't see this as being a strong use case for, I shouldn't say the cloud. Strong use cases for the hyperscaler because it is a private cloud in the data center. But ultimately, we just felt like this was the right answer for energy transfer. Again, for us, even if we moved all of SAP out of our data center, the data center is still going to be there. All the systems that feed these systems are all going to be there. So nothing really changes for us from an infrastructure standpoint. So for us, I think it just made more sense to keep that hardware within those four walls of the data centers, both in Houston and the Dallas timeframe. I'm not sure if that answered your question, but
No, it certainly did. And I'm curious, also
Mhm.
within that level of transformation that you were looking for, wanting to keep that minimal, I
Mhm.
believe there were also customer references that you were able to look at.
yeah, absolutely.
That's-
Yeah, I mean, HPE helped a lot. We got to talk to, probably the largest, Danfoss, the largest CDC model in Denmark, and I think Sune was very helpful in having those conversations. And we're I think we're hopefully going to be one of many as we kind of move forward here. Right now, I think we're kind of the first of any scale in the U.S. So first in North America, and I think so far it's going well, and hopefully hopefully we'll hit our upgrade time frame and get the migration moving in a positive manner in the July time frame. But overall, it's going well.
Globally, this is growing very quickly for
Mhm.
us. I mean, we're into uh, consistently year-over-year growth is in
Mhm.
the triple digits for us in terms of HPE's portion of CDC. So it is new in North America
Mhm.
and not so new in the rest of the world. We only have one region that's a little bit slower, and that region tends to be a little bit slower in adapting newer technology. So other than that, it's growing very quickly.
It's going to be interesting because last year at Sapphire, very few people knew what I was talking about when I said CDC. This year, I'm hoping, if nothing else, we can educate them. But
We're here now.
we are here now, so there you go.
We're doing the good work.
That's right.
Uh, and we have Christian here from Intel as well. And Christian, I'd like to bring you into this conversation to talk about some of the unique technology that Intel provides for this RISE CDC option. Could you speak a little bit about that? And then Jim, I'd love to hear from you on the HPE side as well. And from both of you, what value that technology is driving specifically to customers when you think about that on a technology level?
I'd like to look a little back in history. So we've been working with the ecosystem very closely for decades. So ever since HANA was launched, we were part of the equation, and we've been working very closely with all our partners, specifically with the OEM partners. And we have today over 90 systems available that are HANA certified on Intel architecture with our partners, such as you. And we make sure that our partners always have the latest and greatest technology. And I know HPE is one of our partners that is very close and dear to us. And with Xeon 6, which you have in Greenlake now, we know that you have the best of the latest generation of Intel hardware. What I heard in the conversation was a lot about control. I also would like to add that the flexibility part is quite important, I guess, because with Greenlake, you have the flexibility of choosing, do you want to be TCO optimized? Do you want to be performance optimized, or both, depending on what the workload is? And with HPE and Greenlake, you have that flexibility. And you can also work in sustainability direction, because I guess in a private data center, that's also an important factor. So I really embrace this direction. We are all into PE CDC. We've made the same experience as you guys, that it took a long time to really ramp, and now we see the traction, and we're really very supportive of this trend.
Yeah, you bring up a great point. I mean, for us, our growth model, is both organic and through acquisition. So very important for us that we have a platform that really scales well. We tend to do a few large acquisitions every year, and last year and this year is so far proved to be no exception. So I think we're going to probably grow the platform, over the next 5 or 6 years.
And each data center is unique. Everybody has a different focus, different infrastructure. So to combine those heterogeneous systems is also sometimes a challenge. And I'm sure you guys have the means to support that.
Yeah, from an Intel perspective, Intel's been a fantastic partner for providing two things: resiliency and then flexibility and scale. Flexibility and scale being together, and so we have the ability in resiliency to correct memory errors and things, so that they don't have a problem in shutting down the index service on the SAP system. And so that is unique. Not all of our servers do that, but the ones that we supply for SAP do that specifically for that purpose, because of you need a lot of memory protection. The database is running in memory.
Right.
And the other part is that flexibility and scale. When people say, oh, you automatically have to scale out on a ERP system, well, when you scale out on an ERP system, you have to make sure that no single table spans 2 different nodes. Yep. So now you've added a level of complexity in the management of it. So we provide with Intel the ability to scale all the way up in a single node. Even if you are scaling out, each node can go up to 32 terabytes of SAP certified memory. So that is a huge advantage to give customers the choice and headroom to say that I can continue to scale straight up instead of having to split it and then manage the multi-node situation. It's been a fantastic partnership, and we're so happy to have been part of it.
And we will continue to support that endeavor. So yes.
And from the HPE perspective as well, if you could speak to some of the unique technology that HPE is bringing into this, to expand on that.
Yep. But part of that is the that 3200 server, which is the new name for the SD Flex that Randall mentioned earlier.
Right.
That is the one of the few servers that it has the capability of scaling up to 32 terabytes in a single node, and then that advanced memory protection and error correction ability has all been put in there specifically around SAP ERP. Back in 2010, 2011, we were doing all sorts of research with Intel to come up with the project name that could support this Hasselplattner beautiful system called HANA, and how we were going to get to this point and not run off of storage any longer. We were going to run in memory. And in memory, you needed a big memory footprint, and it needed error correction and all sorts of things to keep this thing running stable. And so we've just kept moving that along, and that's what we're running to today. So we are selling the 3200 not just in the CDC option, but to other vendors that are using it for RISE. And we're just so happy to be able to have that and be able to give customers a chance to choosing what they want to do best. And then if it's scaling up, we have it for them. If they are already so large they have to scale out, they at least have the largest node sizes available. And if they want to scale out, they can use any of the other great TCO optimized. They want to use smaller servers and scale out, and we have that option too for them under Intel technology.
You have the choice. That's the good thing. You can do TCO optimized, or you can scale up and with the max performance. That's the goodness.
It really is about the power of choice. And I think both the scalability and the reliability piece that you were speaking to there clarify this as a really powerful and compelling option for a lot of customers. But as a lot of SAP customers are deciding their RISE paths, there are other new innovations that are emerging from SAP that are certainly coloring those decisions as well. And so, just for my own clarification, with this RISE CDC option, are SAP Business AI and the AI Copilot Joule available? What kind of role does that play in making these kinds of decisions, and what kind of availability does that have within the CDC option?
Yeah. AI Joule is only available, at least as of now, on the RISE platform. So important to us because, while we don't know exactly what that's going to mean yet, well, time will tell, but we do believe AI is going to add a lot of value. We're actually in the process of upgrading our system to 2023 so that, kind of that cost to achieve, we're getting that done now so that when we move to the RISE platform, and there's more content available, that we'll be in a position to be able to leverage it.
There's a lot of people that think it's all or nothing. It's either all going to go into one version. I mean, Rise as the platform as a service offering comes with, if you subscribe to the right edition in terms of premium edition, if you need, and you can look at the price list to figure out what comes with what. But Joule and the Joule AI Copilot, Agentic AI, and the AI that comes with it is available in Rise regardless of how you deploy. And it also coexists with whatever you want to do. If your strategy is in the hyperscale public cloud for AI, you can have it there. And if your strategy is going to be to marry that with data that is sensitive in nature, that you might not want to have a risk of it leaking into some other learning model, then you can have that wherever your other data is going to be, in another cloud, in another private cloud, whether it exists in your own data center, wherever it's going to be. And that's what's an important concept, is you don't have to have one or the other. They're not exclusive of each other. They coexist.
Thank you. In wrapping this up, I want to go back to something that Christian mentioned earlier, which is the idea of control being a really key variable for a lot of SAP customers. Another way to say control is the power of choice. And I would say that what we're speaking to here are the ways that RISE CDC option provides that. In kind of thinking back on this journey, where you've been, where you're going, what else should SAP customers considering these large-scale deployments be thinking about? And what lessons learned can you share, Randall, to start us off from the past couple years of this?
Well, some of these choices are not just HP choices or Intel choices. I think some of them are just manage the risk and manage the project and try to keep that scope as narrow as you possibly can, so that you can be successful. But I think you hit the nail on the head. I think really overall having choice and kind of recognizing what is the best for your organization. And it may not be a data center model. It may not be a customer data center model. But I think recognizing that you have that as a choice, and it probably shouldn't be the first thing, kind of Jim and I were talking about, it probably shouldn't be the first decision you make.
Right.
I think the first decision is, if I'm going to move to this RISE model, it should be, kind of what does that journey look like for me? I mean, we're in a somewhat, perhaps enviable position because we've already been on S4 for quite the number of years. We went, very much greenfield, so we don't carry a lot of technology baggage with us in that perspective. So, for us, it made a lot of sense. But it may not be the right choice for everybody. But I think it's just real important that all the organizations that are kind of thinking about this transition recognize that that's a choice that they have that they can make. So.
Jim?
I talk to a lot of people, and I always talk about, if someone says you can take workloads to the cloud, I'm like, well, you're mistaken, because if it was one cloud and everything worked great together, we didn't have latency and physics to worry about, and data moved freely, we'd be in great shape. But the problem is people like Randall have to worry about multiple clouds and multiple sets of data in different locations. And that's a real worry now and probably for the foreseeable future. The world is hybrid and multi-cloud, and there's no way to get around it. And so I think that giving choices to people how they want to best manage all this, it would make us the best SAP partners in the world, is to let's let them consume it the way they want to consume it, and let them solve the problem with whatever variables and solutions we can give them.
from what I hear in the conversation, I think the risk management is a major factor, and that's also part of the flexibility that you have. You can decide, do I just want to upgrade the hardware?
Mhm.
Do I actually want to do a full migration into the cloud or a partial? So you have the risk aspect covered as well with that flexibility. That's what I like to add to that.
Thank you. And Randall, do you have any thoughts there?
No, I not really. I mean, I guess overall, I guess what I would say is as I'm glad that we're kind of in this position this year with Sapphire. I think last year I was kind of at the very beginning of these conversations, and we signed on the dotted line, so to speak, at the end of 2024, and now this year Sapphire. I think it's going to be very interesting to see what other organizations are thinking about. I think it's going to be very interesting for us to hear what SAP has to say about what they're bringing to the table from AI, which now we're in a position, I think, to take advantage of. So I'm looking forward to it.
Thank you. I think that's a great note for us to close out on. Randall, Jim, Christian, thank you for joining me today. We're here at SAP Sapphire and ASUG Annual Conference. I'm delighted we can make this happen. Let's get out there and talk CDC.